Alumni Relations for RIT. And today's webinar features swimming and diving head coach Phil Baratella and assistant coaches Cliff DeVries and Emily Lederman, and head wrestling coach Jason Vivenzi. Today's discussion will be moderated by Steve Janes from our Sports Information Office. I'd like to take this time to go over a few housekeeping items to make sure you have a great experience during the webinar. During the presentation, only the presenters will be visible to everyone. If you have any questions for our panelists at any time during the program, please enter them in the Q&A box located to the right at the bottom of your screen. Live captioning is provided during today's webinar. Thank you to our captionists for helping us make today's webinar accessible for all of our RIT typers. Today's webinar will be recorded and will be available complete with captions in about a week. Now a little background on today's coaches. 2021 marks Coach Phil Baratella's fourth season as RIT's head swimming and diving coach. 1994 graduate of SUNY Cortland, Coach Baratella was a head coach and program director for the Golden Comet Swim Club from 2010 to 2016. During that time, he was able to develop several of the top swimmers in Western New York. He has coached athletes who have set New York State high school records and achieved time standards to compete in USA Swimming's Olympic trials. Coach Baratella found early success when he got to RIT, leading the women to a 10-0 record in dual meets, while the men were 8-1. Phil was also a retired Monroe County deputy sheriff. Assistant diving coach in 2002 alumnus Cliff DeVries enters his 20th season as the diving coach at RIT. In that time, he has coached 8 All-Americans and has had a host of divers in the mix for All-American honors. Coach DeVries has been named the Upper New York State Athletic Conference Diving Coach of the Year 7 times in his 2 stints at RIT. He is currently the director of Upstate New York Diving, the largest diving club in New York. Hailing from West Virginia, 2020 alumna Emily Lederman serves as RIT's assistant swimming coach. In December 2017, she and fellow teammates won the 200-yard freestyle relay and the 400-yard medley relay at the 26th Don Richards Invitational hosted by RIT. Switching gears to wrestling, Jason Vivenzi enters his 6th season as RIT's head wrestling coach in 2021-2022. Coach Vivenzi was a standout collegiate wrestler at both St. Lawrence and Ithaca College, a 3-time All-American, and a 2-time national champion. In 2018 and 2019, Coach Vivenzi led the Tigers to a historic season, winning a program record 12 dual matches while earning Empire Collegiate Wrestling Conference Coach of the Year and National Wrestling Coaches Association Division III Midwest Region Coach of the Year honors. In addition to serving as RIT's head wrestling coach, Vivenzi is a physical education teacher in the Pittsford Central School District. And last but not least, our moderator, Steve Janes, RIT's Senior Athletics Communications Specialist, who has been in RIT's Sports Information Office since 2003, and I will say is an absolute wealth of knowledge when it comes to RIT athletics. And with that, Steve, the audience is all yours.
Well, thanks, John. Well, that's a lot of pressure that I'm the wealth of knowledge. I don't know about that. I have knowledge. I don't know about wealth of knowledge, but thank you anyway. And welcome to all the folks that are joining us today on this webinar. I like to start these. This is the second one I've done. I like to start by asking the coaches just to give us a brief recap on how the 2021-22 season has started for you guys. I know you're in the midst of a break, so just give us a quick recap. I'll start with Coach Baratella and the swimming and diving coaching staff to give us a recap on the 2021-22 season so far.
Well, good morning. We were very happy to get back to competing this year. And the teams, the men's and women's teams have really responded well. They're very grateful to be able to be competing again. And they've just been doing some great work. Both teams are 5-1 at this point, with strong wins over RPI at the beginning of the season. The men's team did defeat Ithaca in a dual meet right before Thanksgiving, and then the following weekend after Thanksgiving, both teams won the Don Richards Invitational in quite impressive fashion. They swam great, just the support of their teammates and each other throughout. They just put up some great times for mid-season, and we're really excited for the second part of the season coming in right after break. We'll be back training hard, getting ready for Liberty Leagues in February.
Coach Vivenzi, I ask you the same question.
So we have just competed in our fourth competition for this semester. 3 of those competitions kept team score. We wrestled in the Ohio Intercollegiate Open, which there was only one other Division III team in it. The rest were Division II and Division I teams. And because it wasn't open, they didn't keep team score. But in our other 3 competitions, we took first place in all 3. We started out with the Ned McGinley Invitational down at King's College in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. We took first place in that. And we followed up the following weekend. We went to Ohio, had a bunch of kids place in that, but it gave us an opportunity to compete against, Ohio State had their complete starting lineup in the tournament, as did Ohio University and some of the other Division I schools, in that area. And the guys competed well. Then we came back and we won the New York State Collegiate Championships the following weekend. And then finished with the RIT Invitational, which we took first place in as well. And the number 6 team in the country, John Carroll, was there, and we were able to outpoint them. And one of the exciting things about everything so far is for each of these competitions that we won, we still haven't had our full complement of starters in any one of those competitions. So we had our starter at 184 and our starter at heavyweight not compete in the RIT tournament because of just some injuries, nothing that's going to be that's going to keep them out the rest of the season. And then I think Austin Lamb didn't compete in the first competition, and then we had a couple kids that did not compete in the New York State Collegiate Tournament. Chris Horton, who's a returning All-American, didn't compete in that as well. So I think one of the things that the guys are, the guys have lofty goals, and they're not letting, the fact that there might be some, some injuries that are preventing us from having all of our, all of our starters, and they're not allowing that to compromise their goals. They're trying to find a way to be successful in spite of those things. And so far our depth has proven that it can handle it. So.
Coach Vivenzi, Coach Baratella mentioned something, how excited his teams were coming back to compete again in 21-22. And I wanted to ask, I'll start with you. How difficult was it that 19-20, taking a look back, you've got, I believe it was 5 guys that had qualified to wrestle in the NCAA Division III Wrestling Championships. And then all of a sudden, COVID hits and the world is turned upside down. I'll start with you. How difficult was that to cope with, and how did you handle it with your guys that had qualified for the postseason?
Yeah, so that's really an interesting story in that we had already flown out to Cedar Rapids and practiced in the arena with the rest of the country that was competing for 2 days. And we were about, 16 hours away from, the weigh-in and the first whistles. And we got I got a text message and just telling us that the tournament was canceled. So I had to send a text message out to the rest of the guys for a meeting in our room, and there was some buzz, so that we were just kind of hoping to get it going, to get the tournament started, and kind of get in under the wire, so to speak. It didn't happen. It was just very interesting in that we were so ready and so healthy that we were, we had taken 11th in the country the year before, and with 3 guys, and we qualified 5 guys this year, many 2 of which were returning All-Americans with some pretty lofty goals, with which I thought they were ready to win. And then to have to to pull them in and talk to them, and to have, 22 and 23-year-old men, kind of, having one-on-ones with them and they're in tears because, they've, of all the sacrifices that they've made up to this point. And to have it, taken away from them by something that's completely outside their control what was a difficult thing. But, as a coach and an educator, you try to console them, give them, obviously the bigger picture on all the things that they were able to accomplish, up to this point. And, while this will be, this is a similar situation for, everybody in the country, many people around the world, right, that were dealing with the same thing. And it just was an unfortunate circumstance and sequence of events that we kind of got caught in. Like I said, we almost made it through, but I felt like we were poised to crack, break into the top 10 there. And that was something that we were, super proud of and hoping to build off of as a program. And, it didn't happen. But, with the ambiguity of the situation, right, even moving into the next season, we were hopeful, even in the off season, and we had a really good off season with guys. We had a great recruiting class come in, and even up until they kind of pulled the 2020-2021 season from us, we had no positive cases. Our guys were staying on lockdown. They didn't want to jeopardize a thing. And then, last season got canceled also. So, I kind of was afraid that we were going to have some guys that were starting to transition, almost like they'd been out of it for so long. Maybe it was going to be difficult to get them back. And I did sense that with a couple guys, but once we got them back and we started to be able to get on the mats again this year, it was like their whole demeanor changed. It was like someone turned the lights back on and they were super enthusiastic and couldn't wait to get back to competing again. And they've proven that they're not wasting this opportunity, so far. But
Coach Baratella and the swimming and diving coaches, I ask you the same question. You were in the midst of getting ready to get into the postseason of the swimming and diving schedule. And then, all of a sudden the world changes and it's turned upside down. It had to be, how did you cope with that with your student athletes?
I mean, we were in the similar situation as Jason, but we were 3 days from flying down to Greensboro for NCAAs for swimming. With us, we had one athlete going, Kavi, and so, I mean, we were ready and we were just able to process at that point. It was our first year. She had already made significant gains from her high school and club previous experience. So, we just really use that as a moment, like Jason says, this is something out of our control. Just moving forward, it gave us something to look forward to. And our teams were the same way. They handled the lockdowns safely, and just did everything that within their abilities to stay healthy, keep their teammates healthy. So all of RIT athletics could enjoy some sort of participation in the last year once our seasons were canceled. But they just really carried that spirit through for athletics. It enabled our spring teams to compete. So we felt like we played our part in keeping everybody healthy and on the right track. So all of our RIT athletics could participate. We were able to practice last year. We had a few scrimmages in the spring, which was great, but it gave us a chance to really try some different things without the background of having to compete. So we tried some things that we might not necessarily have done in other seasons where we were competing, and we learned some lessons. We were able to adapt some things to this year moving forward. So they've really done a great job just being able to focus and be there for each other. So I mean, it's been quite the year, but and it's been quite the process through COVID and coming through on this side, but they continue to do what they can to keep everyone safe and healthy and supporting each other. Really, one thing that I saw was just the level of compassion for their fellow teammates, regardless of where they were mentally, physically, academically. It was just, everyone helping each other out through whatever necessary means. And it was just a byproduct of, what they had gone through and the adversity they had gone through and how they've really been able to help each other through and push each other through to be successful and, keep achieving what they want to achieve. Jason talked about lofty goals, and we have those same goals, and they're focused day in, day out of, pushing for Liberty League championships, pushing to get as many as we can to NCAAs. That year drought of not having that opportunity has really made them even hungrier for it. So, they've taken the lessons they've learned about supporting each other and helping each other, and they're just really moving that forward now into this season and, the programs moving forward as well.
Coach Vivenzi, you were in a similar situation last year, obviously, with the season not taking place. Were you able to get did you find that the newcomers, the freshmen last year that are now academically sophomores, were you able to train with them and sort of get them acclimated to college wrestling and college life? And did you find that helped those guys that are now sophomores going into this season?
I think academically it definitely helped them. Competition wise, not so much. We were kind of given the green light to start training in February. Some kids had made the decision to just go home and learn remotely and train at home, because at the end of first semester they didn't think they were going to get an opportunity to be able to train here. So with that question in mind, they wanted to train so bad that they just went home because they were able to find opportunities to train there. So I wouldn't say competition wise that they got acclimated to college wrestling, but I would say, the academic piece was beneficial for them, that there wasn't as much of a transition this year that our traditional freshmen usually go through.
I wanted to ask both of you, you both coach team sports, but they're based on individual results. I wanted to ask you, how do you manage those individuals in their each event or weight class, and how do you get them to kind of come together as a team collectively to reach that one goal that you're all looking forward to? I'll start with Coach Vivenzi on that.
So, I think a lot of that comes together with the type of student athlete that we recruit. So as I go through and I'm screening a student athlete that I'm talking to, there's kind of two boxes that I need to check. First one is, what are your grades? Right. So this conversation doesn't really need to go much further if you can't, meet the rigorous academic standards that we have here. And then number two, do you love this sport? Right. Because I love it. And I don't want to look at student athletes that, maybe are there for the wrong reasons. So, and I will kind of delve into that with other coaches that I may know from the area that are familiar with them, and just try to get a gauge on that, because you can, if you don't love it and you are not appreciative of the process, and embrace it, so to speak, then, you know, that you take a kid like Dempsey King. Dempsey King he was fifth in the state of New York at 132 pounds in high school. That's pretty good. He wound up being second in the country, losing in the finals a decision to a kid who was one of the top 100 recruits in the country, you know, at the Division I level. So how does a kid go from being kind of, you know, fifth in the state to being able to compete with one of the top Division I recruits in the country? And it's because of the way he was wired mentally, right? He's a kid who was, you know, analytical, driven, goal oriented, had, you know, wanted to be the best, and wasn't, you know, wasn't okay with saying, well, that guy should be better than me. You know, he took advantage of his co-op year, treated it like almost like a Division I redshirt would in terms of training and entering open competitions against Division I competition. And that's the type of student athlete that we have here. He loves it. And his leadership was infectious with the rest of our team. He learned a lot from, you know, Brad Mayville, who came before him. So he was a teammate of Brad's, or Brad coached him for a year. So Brad was a tremendous leader, and our leadership continues to pay itself forward. And I feel like the leadership structure that we have, the way that they're organized, a lot of times I feel as coaches, you know, some coaches just take some of their best players and make them captains, make them leaders. And I don't believe in that. I expect a lot out of our leaders, and they come through for us every year, but we work on what the expectation is with them. And I only bring that up is because you asked me a little bit about how do we bring these guys forward and how do we keep kids together in an individual sport. And I think that, you know, is an integral part, because, you know, if I have 10 guys, I have 4 team leaders, and underneath those team leaders, I have 10, you know, 10 or 11 guys, you know, that are training in the off season. So they'll set up, they create their own training schedule. I do not tell them what to do in the preseason or postseason. They decide what they're going to do. They decide what the level of accountability is going to be. If someone doesn't show and is unaccountable, it means they don't communicate with their team leader. They can miss for whatever reason. They just have to learn each kid has to learn to be accountable. So they'll train and lift usually 4 days a week. And then on Friday is game day. So they're all broken up into 4 different teams because with their team leader, and then they'll play ultimate frisbee, soccer, football, dodgeball, basketball, and whatever it is on that day. And then the next day they'll have a barbecue on a Saturday. So they're very tight. And then that translates to season success and individual success, because someone emerges as the starter. And our guys take pride in the fact that if it's not them, that they're responsible for that starter's success. So that's so they push each other and train each other, and they understand the process. They understand not everybody can be president, you know. But once that person's there, they really do their best to make sure that they're in the best position to succeed. And so I think that team chemistry that's built from the day that they get dropped off on campus as freshmen or first year students to the time they transition, like we're going to graduate 10 kids this year. That means that 10 kids stuck with the sport of wrestling, which is a very grueling sport, you know, for 5 years. And they didn't quit. And probably only 2 of them are starters. So why would a kid who's not a starter sign up to be a part of this and stick with it when they don't have to for 5 years? And I think it speaks to the environment and the chemistry and the fact that they don't want to not be a part of that group. So I think the individual nature of it, we got guys who love the sport, kind of to put a bow on it. They train to be they want to be the guy, they want to be the best, understanding of the fact that so does everybody else that's here. And then once, starter emerges, it's all about getting that guy ready. And the care for that person, I think, is fostered in all the hours that they spend with each other, not just during the season, but in the preseason, and the relationships that are built during that time of preparation outside of the season.
Coach Baratella, anything to add to that? It's a unique situation with both your sports that, each individual is, different weight classes, or in your case, different events, multiple events, in some cases, divers as well. They're focused on that event, but they all have to come together in that collective team environment. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well. I just find it very interesting, that whole dichotomy between the team sport within an individual sport.
And Jason hit a lot of the points that I would as well, just about the focus on team and that drive. The other thing that makes us unique, so to speak, is, we're technically a men's team and a women's team on paper. And we're swimming and diving on paper, but we all see ourselves as one program, one team. And they're invested, the men's team's invested in the women's team's success, the women's team's invested in the men's team's success. And it goes down to each individual, and we talk about this frequently, is each individual is working hard wherever they're at, performance-wise, whatever events they do, they're working their hardest in their workouts so they can get better. But the key component to that is, as they're doing it, they're making sure to bring their teammates with them. So we talk about, I'm getting better, I'm doing the things that I do to make myself better so I can help you to be better. And it goes throughout the programs. We practice together, men's and women. We're running our different training groups throughout the pool to get their specific workout needs in. And then, the divers are doing their thing in the diving wells also. But when it comes down to competition, when it comes down to everything else, it's one team. It's the same thing. They live together, they do everything together. And so, their success is attributed to the contributions of everybody. And we'll talk about each other's goals openly. So everyone has their goals, and they share them with their teammates in meetings. So each athlete knows what the other one wants to achieve. And it's really a selfless thing. We want to swim our fastest, we want to dive our best, and the times will take care of themselves, but they want to win team championships. And that takes the contribution of everybody. And it's not just the people going on the championship roster team. It's the people that are not going to be competing at Liberty Leagues, but they're still there training day in and day out with each other. They're still holding each other accountable. They're still, living together, being friends and supporting. So it goes beyond what they're doing in the water. It's that selfless giving to their teammates that really takes the individual part out of it and transitions it into a team sport.
Excellent. And I invite those that are listening along, if you have any questions, throw them up in the Q&A section, and I'll be sure to forward them over to and ask the coaches respectively. I was going to ask, you both are coaches of sports that run over 2 semesters. We got 21, we got 22. And I know in chatting with you guys in the past that you have a lot of kids that have to go on co-op for 1 semester or the spring semester, or, my question is, will you be getting any student athletes back for the spring semester 2022 that will help the team going forward as we finish the season? I'll start with Coach Baratella.
We will. we'll have Sam Russell and Liz Kisker on the women's side coming back from co-op. On the men's side, we'll have John Parker on the boards, Max Bennett, Ryan Sweet coming back, and Margot McBurtry was studying abroad in Scotland last semester too, so she'll be joining us for next semester.
Coach Vivenzi, any guys coming back from a co-op, or will just be rejoining the team for the second semester?
We do not. We have nobody coming back. As a matter of fact, we lose James Ost, not to a co-op, but so James is one of these brilliant kids who was a freshman in 2020, and he's able to graduate in 3 years, right? So I can't even, you know, whatever.
Doesn't compute, but
Big, just jealous in so many ways. But at any rate, so James, we are going to lose him this semester because just in, you know, to go full circle with what we were talking about earlier, James does not want to leave after this year. So what he's going to do is he is going to study abroad in Nice, France, and so that he can come back next year for the full year and be a teammate and team member. So he's trying to fight. So we're losing him, but gaining him for a full year next year.
gotcha.
Instead of just having him stay this year and then losing him altogether. So I guess, no, we're not getting anybody back. We're going to lose somebody, unfortunately. It was, you know, a huge part to our team on every level, but good news is
He'll be back
result in him
eventually.
being back for longer than he normally
Right.
would need to be. So.
I wanted to ask you both coaches about, you always traditionally have some student athletes that are also part of NTID here at RIT. And I wanted to ask you both about, you know, how that has helped your programs over the years to have those student athletes be part of your program. And I'll start with Coach Baratella. Just to talk about the NTID and the impact that those student athletes have had. And I'll even open it up to Emily as well. As the assistant coach and a former student athlete, she can answer that as well and talk about her experience as a student athlete as a Tiger too.
That's exhibit one or exhibit. You know, she was an NTID student and now she's our assistant coach here. And it's been, you know, I'll just speak briefly and let her speak more on her own, but she's very gung-ho about bringing more students into NTID that are swimmers, and she's made some great contacts with USA Deaf Swimming and swimmers within, you know, on the USA Deaf team. So, you know, as a recruiting standpoint, she has great insight. You know, the emails she sends explaining just the amazing resources and opportunities here for our deaf and hard of hearing athletes is great. But I'll let Emily speak more to that.
Yeah, so as Phil mentioned, I was a swimmer on the team and I was also part of NTID. So that means I was cross-registered. So I had support from NTID, and I actually remember coming in 2016 and I had a deaf teammate, Don Riccio, who was part of USA Deaf Swimming. And I grew up fully mainstream oral, which meant that I had hearing aids and I talked and I didn't know any sign language. So that I would talk with Dom like every day after practice, you know, and that was it was funny. He kind of made fun of me later because apparently it was really bad signing. But you know, regardless, I think that was, you know, very important for me, and that's something that I've wanted to help my other teammates with. So as a swimmer, you know, I would always like sign with like other students who were deaf or hard of hearing. Right now we have 2. So we have a new deaf diver and we have a deaf swimmer. And I think that's been, you know, and because of my experience in the program, it gave me a lot of confidence. I mean, not only, in the pool, but also being able to be on deck. So with the swimmer, I'm able to, like sign at him. So like, I can really communicate that effectively. And then we have our new diver who's actually, fully deaf. He has cochlear implants, so he takes them off. He's completely deaf, but he's already improved so much as a first year student, that like, and now we're working with getting him interpreters for the spring, that I'm really excited to see where he goes, right? So it's like being able to take in athletes who don't have the same level of access and being able to help like transform them and make them into champions. I mean, our deaf swimmer just won Liberty League, or not Liberty Leagues, the non-Richard Invitational in the 1650. And I think that a big part of it is having, practices printed out, having interpreters at practice. And so it's kind of a win-win, right? Like, because they get the experience of a lifetime, and then we get to unlock this like really awesome potential. So yeah, and and like Phil mentioned, we've been working on recruiting a couple of upcoming like deaf talent, people who have been on the national team, people who are going to be competing internationally next year, which I think is really exciting, because that's not an experience that a lot of our swimmers have. And I think that'll add a lot of really interesting perspectives. And what I've also noticed, our hearing swimmers, some of them are picking up sign language, and they're picking up sign language from me. They're picking up sign language from their deaf teammates, and I think that it adds to our bond, right? And it's a good skill to have, and it's teaching everybody a lot.
Coach Vivenzi, you've had some legendary Hall of Fame wrestlers who were also part of NTID. Tony Wallace comes to mind. And I know you've got a couple this year. Just talk about, how that, it always seems we have a few wrestlers from NTID, and just the impact that they have on the program as well.
Well, I think, yeah. So when you reference guys like Tony, and then, Matt Hamill and wrestlers like that, and over the past couple of years, we've had several deaf student athletes. And for example, as our roster continues to grow, you have to be more and more careful with who you keep on your roster. So for example, we have George Query this year, and he just endeared himself to the other members of the team in the preseason, and his work ethic and his attitude. And he's just such a gregarious kid, that, it was, we had some difficult decisions to make, as we kind of, were asked to get down to our final 36. And he was a kid who, just, earned his spot with his attitude and his effort, and the relationships that he created in the preseason with the guys on the team. So, the assistance and support that we get through our IT, we have an unbelievable interpreter, Gina Coyne, who comes in, and she's fluent in wrestling, So it's so funny. So she'll come up to me after practice and be like, "Oh, coach, what was that one again? I've never heard that one before." So she's, she's super active in learning and trying to convey the sport, as we kind of flow through practice. She's a huge part of that success. And then, really the student athletes, who are deaf or hard of hearing, really do a huge service to the other student athletes on the team in terms of awareness and appreciation for people with different abilities. And one of our assistant coaches has gone so far as to work on Coach Cannon, James Cannon, is taking American Sign Language to try to learn and enhance his communication with the student athletes. And then, as fate would have it, a couple weeks ago, I'm just running practice, and all of a sudden, in the corner doorway in the room, in a doorway that we really never use to get in and out of the room, Matt Hamill and Jay Jakubowski are standing in the doorway. I had no idea that they were even coming. And they just happen to be standing in the doorway watching. Now, I'm old enough to, like, Matt and I were training partners after I got out of college. He was a student here. I coached here 1995, 96, 96, 97 as an assistant, as I was kind of, working on getting a full-time teaching job in one of the local school districts. But I would come here and work out and help coach when Ron Gross was the coach. And so Matt and I have had a relationship for a long time, and Jay as well. So, so it was great for him to cut. Like I entered, I stopped practice immediately. I brought him in, introduced him, and immediately everyone kind of gave him a round of applause. And he came and addressed the team, but you could really see George's eyes light up, because he's, is to Deaf Nation, specifically wrestlers in Deaf Nation, he's a hero. And it was a nice little surprise, and it was good for me to see him again, because I hadn't seen him in quite some time as well. And Jay as well. Jay's a sweetheart of a guy, and they're still very close friends as well. So
I remember Matt when I was the intern back in 98, 99, and he still does today. He just had this presence when he walked into a room. You're like, oh, there's someone to be reckoned with.
Right.
As we kind of wrap up here, a personal reflection on mine. I was at both your events last Saturday when wrestling hosted the RIT Invitational and the second day of competition at Don Richards. And it was actually a joy to be around watching student athletes compete in a full field house, and both were being successful. It was a pleasure to watch both sports compete at a high level at that time. And that's just my own little personal reflection. But as we wrap up, you've got some time off, both your teams. I think you're both heading out after the holidays to do a little training and compete a little bit before we get back. I wanted if you would just take a few moments to wrap up and sort of look towards the second semester as we get into some more competitions and head closer and closer to the postseason. I'll start with Coach Vivenzi. Just kind of give us a second semester outlook as we head into the break.
So we have a pretty ambitious second semester. We're going to be going out to our next competition is in Louisville, Kentucky. The past couple of years, we've kind of the profile of our program is such now that we're getting invited to the National Dual Meet Championships, where they invite the top 16 teams in the country out to Louisville, Kentucky to compete for the National Dual Meet Championships. And, as someone who kind of stood in front of recruits, over the past, several years, and, as you recruit, you try to cast your vision, right, for the program and what you hope and you aspire to grow into. And we're there, and we don't have to go. We're not obligated to go, but I feel, personally, I'm obligated to provide that opportunity for our guys. And I feel like even, we got beat by the number one team in the country pretty badly the last time we were out there. But I feel like the impact it had on our team moving forward for the rest of the season was significant enough to qualify, 50% of our lineup for the national championship. So, we're going to go out there and we're going to compete, and we're going to, in terms of typical traditional RIT fashion, we're going to collect data, right? And we're going to learn from it, and it's going to continue to allow us to evolve and hopefully make a run at the qualifying a bunch for the national championships that happen to be out in Cedar Rapids again. So we have a lot of difficult competitions left on the schedule, and so we're just kind of jumping into the fire here and hoping that we prepare for the two most important tournaments of the year, which are the national qualifier and the nationals, so.
Coach B, same question.
Yeah, well, right before the new year, we're going to be heading down to Florida, our annual training trip, which is it's an amazing team bonding experience. It just gives us a chance to focus on training, the team, athlete development, all that good stuff. We'll have a meet down there. We'll be competing against Indian River State College, which is the winningest junior college program in the country. They have several Olympians through their program. Primarily, they move on to top level Division I schools, so it'll be great competition for us with that. Then we come back and we have a challenging dual meet season throughout January with Hamilton, Rochester. We'll have a quad meet here at RIT with Geneseo, us, Rochester, and Nazareth. And then, as Jason says, we're preparing for the biggest meets of our year, Liberty League championships, and then the NCAA tournament. Mixed in between that is the NCAA diving regionals, which we already have 2 of our male divers have qualified for that. So that will be the regional qualification for NCAAs, which will happen the weekend after Liberty Leagues. But as Jason said, when recruiting, we talk about our vision, and the first step in our vision is to win a Liberty League championship. Right? He's never done it in swimming, and both programs really have the confidence that they can win on both sides. They're working hard for it, and it's going to be quite the meet. Where we are right now with our training and our performance, we're very optimistic for how we can do. And we'll see where it leads us. Qualifying for NCAAs is very tough on the Division III level, but we have several relays and individuals within the top 30 in the country right now. So we got to look at getting them top 20, top 16 over the next couple months. So that's something that's very attainable for us. And hopefully we're bringing a few relays, individuals on both teams, men's and women's, as well as and our divers as well. So it's really a month and a half out, and 2 months out, we're excited.
That's great. I encourage those that are listening and will be listening or watching in future to, if you can, get out to some of the home meets and the matches that are coming up here in the second semester, because we have 2 very good teams here at RIT in wrestling and swimming and diving, and I encourage fans to get out there and watch them. I'm going to turn it back over to John for some final housekeeping items before we wrap up, and I'd like to thank both Coach Baratella and Coach Vivenzi for joining us today. It was enjoyable to chat with you, and again, I turn it back over to John to wrap it up for us.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, and thanks to all of our coaches today. I hope everyone who tuned in enjoyed today's webinar, and everybody who's watching the recording also enjoyed it. So before leaving today, we encourage everyone to connect with the Alumni Relations and Athletics pages on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Those links can be found in the chat box. In addition to our social media platforms, we encourage everyone to join our newest platform, Tigers Connect, where you have the opportunity to mentor RIT students from anywhere in the world. That's for our alumni. And you can go on and you'll get matched up with a student as a mentor, a really cool platform that we just launched. So to register for Tigers Connect, click on the links found in the chat box. What's coming up this year, RIT Athletics is offering an opportunity to hear from the coaches with monthly webinars to be held every second Tuesday of the month with different coaches. And that will conclude Tuesday, April 12th. Next month, we will feature actually 2 webinars. On January 11th, 2015 alumnus Celeste Brown, women's hockey head coach, and on January 18th, 92 alumnus Dave Worth, track and field head coach. And these events and other alumni events can be found online by clicking the links found in the chat box. And lastly, RIT is in a campaign to transform the future of RIT. We want to take a moment to thank all of those who have helped us reach over 80% of our $1 billion goal. We're nearing the finish line, and all gifts play an important part in reaching that goal. If you would like to help transform the future of RIT, we invite you to make a gift of any size. Additionally, be a part of our growing Sentinel Society. To become a member, a minimum pledge of $1,000 per year for a duration of 5 years can be directed to the Athletics General Fund. And if you would like to support the swimming and diving or wrestling teams, please visit the links that are appearing in the chat box now. Again, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Stay healthy, stay connected, and we will see you next month. Thanks again to Steve and all of our coaches today. Take care.